Hello, I am Kyle Lord, and this is my presentation on my information retrieval special topic. And actually, my topic for this presentation, I'm going to cover a couple different things that we discussed in class. One of the main things I want to focus on is user interfaces, and specifically some of the differences in user interfaces from business to business information retrieval or at a consumer level, and some of the differences in the ways that information is accessed depending on security and authorization. Some other things I want to get into is the sharing of data and different policies and procedures that can affect information retrieval. I'm going to go back to the main point of one of the weekly discussions was on user interfaces, and I didn't get to share all the information that I had and that I wanted to share. And so to kind of illustrate some of the user interface decisions that are made in information retrieval and some of the limitations, I'm going to show a couple different applications that were designed, couple by me, by the Kansas State Department of Education, and how we allow users to retrieve information and how we try to make the user interface as easy as possible. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we collect some of that information and how the information comes to us, and then how we transform it and share it to users who submitted it and to others, including the federal government. And then last, I have a little presentation that I give, and in part of it I explain there is National Student Clearinghouse data, which is collected from institutes of higher education, and it was initially used for student loan information and federal aid. And now that's a very, very large data set that can be purchased and can be used. And the state of Kansas is one of the people who buys that information. And I was going to show how we retrieve it, and then how we make it, once we've collected, aggregated, and are using the information, we have a separate information retrieval system for other users to get it from us once we match it with our data. So that's where I'm going to start. As a user in the state of Kansas, as a school district user, I'm required to submit many different student collections, everything from my enrollment, there's funding information, things about classes students are taking, and all of this is done through the different KSDE web applications. The main one that districts would use to submit information on students is called the KIDS collection. That's the Kansas Individual Data on Students collection. And so once a district has submitted their KIDS information, and actually that brings me to an interesting point about information retrieval. Long before this happens, every school district in the state and every school district in the country probably has a school information system. That's a SIS. It keeps track of everything they do, from their students' attendance to grades to their teachers' assignments, to half of them have bus schedules and anything about students, IEP information, any special learning things, it's all in there. So someone has to enter that information at the school level, and then the state does not retrieve it. They have to actively submit it. There's actually a proposal in place right now. We're working on a way for the state to automatically retrieve this type of information. But currently, so they retrieve the information. It has to be set up in a specific format. That's where we get into metadata and file specifications, and they send it to us. But now we have data on millions of students literally for years and years and years. And how does someone access that information? Well, someone with a login, obviously I'm a state level user, they can come in and they have all these reports. This is a very old application and it's not fancy, but you can see what records that I as a user submitted that were accepted. We have many types of records for many different reasons. I can sort them by type. Current year accountability students, that's what students am I accountable for in my building or my district. And then the rest are just kind of some helpful things. The student history is an often used report because I can find all the records that have been submitted for a specific student as long as I have some basic information about that student. And I will show you here what this right here, state student ID. It's the most important part of all the information retrieval systems I'm going to discuss, because that's how we track students. It's a unique identifier. I think most information retrieval systems are going to have some sort of unique key or unique identifier, and that one's ours. So this KID system, in our master data management process, it's the one that this is the master data. So now we've collected data about students. You can also see, I won't get into all these individually, but our other information retrieval systems, specific ones about dropout and graduation, educator data reports, that's pretty self-explanatory. The integrated accountability system is mostly about special education and different things. Oops, I clicked on it. Very sorry. I apologize. And then like the KCC, that's Kansas Course Code. So that's an information retrieval system where you can get state information about types of classes and courses and how the state, I guess, sorts them and classifies them and match your courses to those. KELPA is an English language assessment, and that was somewhere to retrieve information about English language learners and their previous test results. So you can see we have many types, and I have access to a few under this account. I think we have 116 at last count. So their information retrieval, among many other things and requirements that we do, is hopefully something we're doing to provide a benefit to people. Okay, on to this. This is my baby, because this is second generation. Academic measures of student success is a offshoot of something called measurable objectives, which was an application that was designed by me, and that most of the calculations and many of the assessment things were directly designed by me. So this is the second iteration. And as I said, this is kind of my magnum opus, I guess, if you will. So this is only an information retrieval system. You cannot submit any information into AMOS. This is where you come to find out about your students, and we have aggregated data from many different information retrieval systems. We've taken student demographic data and student placement and location data, and we tie it to how they've done on state assessments, how they've done on graduation, chronic absenteeism. Again, over here to the left, we have the English language learners and their type of data, and then the National Student Clearinghouse data that I referenced. I think this is where I'm going to kind of jump off, and we're going to talk specifically about the National Student Clearinghouse. And to do that, I'm going to jump over to my presentation here. So the National Student Clearinghouse, what do? They were initially started as a financial aid. They tracked who's enrolling in college, so for purposes of financial aid. Over time, they basically started collecting information on everyone who's in college. And these numbers are actually, these are Kansas specific, and this is old. And we're, by placing pressure on public institutions, we're actually around 97% coverage now. So this is a list of all students who are attending college in Kansas, essentially, short of a few who, because of FERPA rights and things, have chosen not to make their information available to us. So how do we get this data? It's pretty simple, not at all. A DGSR is a dropout graduation summary report. So every fall, a district sends us a list of their last graduating class, and it's based on who graduated, who dropped out, who transferred, da-da-da-da-da. We take the list of graduates, and here we have their four-year adjusted cohort, which is the students who made it from freshman to senior year and graduated. So now we take that list, we verify it, and we send this list of students to the National Student Clearinghouse. The National Student Clearinghouse takes this information, and because they do not use our unique IDs, they match it into their system with all the information that they have collected through their various retrieval systems from other higher institutions, and they match those students. They send us back aggregated files for every building and for every individual student. We get a record by student, by semester, by institutions. We get a ton of records per student that says when they enrolled, what they were doing, where they were at. We take all this and we load it into the AMOS system that I was talking about. Now, once we put it into AMOS, this is where really the user interface comes in. Because, as I will show you here, if I pick a school, the first thing we make available to a district, most simple form of information retrieval, we give them everything. This complete student NSC report is essentially a dump of the database table that we receive from the National Student Clearinghouse. They just get everything. And as I was saying, that's one row of data per student, per semester, per institution. It is overwhelming. Oh, that's wonderful for my presentation. We'll try another one just to see. But if not, it's an Excel spreadsheet. It is just a simple download. There's nothing fancy about it, and it's hard to make heads or tails of it. If you know what you're doing and you have a good data person, there are columns that have things like degree attained. Yeah, obviously that's not fair. That's not fair. Things like degree attained and enrollment status. And now part of the issue with this, and this is where the user interface comes into play, is that doesn't necessarily tell you what the state of Kansas is doing with that data. It just gives you a whole bunch of data. We aggregate that data. Actually, before I even get to that, I want to talk about another form of information retrieval, kind of as we've incorporated it into our user interface. The National Student Clearinghouse creates their own reports, and they put together a 50-ish page PDF for every district that we submit. We don't do anything with this. We don't calculate any of this data. We don't alter them in any way, but we do help. We are the provider of this data. So a district user can log in here. They hit their basic reports, and they say, let me download it. Pretty simple. This better work. Haha, I think it did. So they get 50-ish pages of data on many different graduating classes, what kind of institution. This is actually really cool data, but who enrolled, who lasted, who made it 2 years, when they went in-state or out-of-state, all sorts of cool stuff. But so that, I guess that really is the most simple form of information retrieval. We don't do anything with it except for make it available. We say, have at it. I want to say I don't love this user interface. The one good thing that we've done with this, and this isn't necessarily part of the design, but we've done a lot of education on this. I spend a lot of time giving presentations on AMOS and what's inside it. So I think because of the education, users know that when it comes to performance and the accountability that they're held to at the state level or the federal level, if they want data, they come to AMOS. And so I spend a lot of time talking to them about what you can find in these different reports. So I do think that the user interface could be improved, but I think it's functional enough that with proper education and training available and different help documents that it's usable. And okay, so I guess the higher form of information retrieval and information availability that we make is when we manipulate the data and then make it available for someone to retrieve. A big initiative in the state of Kansas is students graduating and being prepared to be quote unquote successful in the post-secondary world. So we have a success average, which is the amount of students that graduate and then either make it through 2 years current of constant enrollment in college, or they already have a degree, or they get a professional certification. And then the effective rate is it's a combination of the graduation and success. So this looks at all your students, even non-graduates, how did they do? So the fun part of the information retrieval is that this is easy to find. And I was gonna show if I can, oh no. I apologize. Just want to share my screen again. Okay, I apologize. I want that one under there. Okay, so sorry. When we talk about information retrieval, that was all through a secure authenticated application. But there's a way for a public user to go retrieve very similar information just at a higher level and without individual student data. This is the Kansas Public Report Card. Now this, if we want to talk about user interfaces and information retrieval, this is a case study in how not to have your data. We are working on redoing this. This is a terrible report card in my opinion. I had a huge part in designing it and upgrading it from the original, so I will take full blame for that. And I'm going to go back here in a second, show you how terrible it is for information retrieval. But when I was talking specifically about the NS, oh no, look, here's a good, I chose a district before I started the presentation, came to their page, and I have all these tabs, and I have no idea what they mean. We have some icons down here, but up here is not even icons. So as a public user who doesn't know this data in depth, what kind of information retrieval system is this? When I have no idea what these mean, what kind of data is behind them, what they do. And within each page, it's the same sort of mess. So these are just not. You can see we make a lot of data available. Again, here's other things that we have either collected and just turn around a report, or we aggregate in different ways, or we show some comparisons. The NAEP test, we show national comparisons. So some of this is cool data. It really is the user interface that's lacking. So just because I happen to know where this is, even though you would never find it, a public user can see the aggregated forms of this data that we were just looking at. What they can't see is any data that really tells you which students caused this. As a district user, I have the right and the authorization to see who was counted in my success rate, and maybe I could actually make some decisions to help future students based on that. But for the public, it's really truly just a reporting mechanism as far as the information retrieval aspect goes. So I wanted to show that just to kind of highlight the differences in the user interface and the available options. I cannot go look at the that NSC basic report that I showed that gave you breakdowns on who went where and the amount of students I had here and there. And I certainly can't see individual student data, but I can see reports. And I got to show you I forgot. I started there. So this is a poor user interface, I believe. And our pages are not standardized. We kind of have the same template, but if I go to, we have a lot of different things going on here. This is just some traditional demographic information, and you can see that it looks a lot different than those other pages. It tells me how many males and females I have. I got this I can look at some other stuff if I want. Again, all of this essentially comes from the KID system. It's really just a matter of different filters, different security levels, and different ways of aggregating the data depending on the audience. So that is where I'm going to wrap up my presentation. I hope that it was somewhat useful and that I got into some user interface. Let me see, just to circle back. One thing I forgot to mention that I wanted to mention, we have or had a standard web template with the idea to update everything, all the 116 applications I mentioned. This left-hand menu was a requirement for that. In some cases, it works wonderfully. You'll notice there's no breadcrumbs up here. I can't easily go back a screen. I have to know. One thing I don't like about this, like I said, we do education and help, but if I were to click into this as a new user, I have no way of knowing that there is stuff I might want, and I have to scroll way down here. That's such a basic thing, but I think anyone who's looked at a little bit of web design and that sort of user interface knows that anything below the page break doesn't get the amount of views, and it doesn't draw that much attention. So to me, this is a big design choice that was made that is maybe not the best. I think it does work for a lot of things because we have a lot of applications that have 5 or 6 pages, and you put everything there, it's clear, click where you want, and they have a very specific set of users. So a user logging into that application is looking for a specific piece of data. In AMOS, I give presentations to superintendents and tell them they can look at every building in their district. I talk to building principals about how they can look at every student in their building. We talk to teachers, especially like English language learner teachers, about the data they can find in here. This DLM report is for special ed teachers. That's the dynamic learning maps test, which is for special education students. And so this has a huge varied audience. And to me, or someone like me, all this data is related because it combines different measures with our kids system data. To an outside user, none of these things have anything to do with each other. Some's about state assessments, some has nothing to do, some of it's with the National Student Clearinghouse data. So I don't like the user interface in that way. I also wish we do have, on some of the newer reports, we have these cool rollover things. In some of our other applications, in the dropout graduation one that I referenced earlier, if I were to click on something like success rate, I could get a pop-up menu telling me exactly which students, along with their state identifier, made up that 54.5%. And we have a lot of things that work like that. And that's super helpful because I have to do a lot of work on my own right now. Okay, you've told me in 2013 I had 54.5% success. Who was that? And so when we talk to school districts about using this information, that adds a whole extra step for them they have to do before they can even use it. So as far as, that's another user interface limitation to me, and that's just something that is something that's known that needs to be added, that just due to resources and time has not. I would also really like to just see a basic calculation. We show the rates. We do not show, let me show you a different example kind of on a different report. On many reports, we don't just show a percent, we show a total amount of students, the total in this level, and then the percent that would be. So even though you still have another step to go find out who those students are, I know that in level 1 for this particular metric, I had 101 students. I know that I had 268 total. That's at least a little better. I still would love to be able to click on this 268 and get a list of that students. Makes it much easier to verify, but someday, somehow. We've done some cool things. We have these that didn't used to be there that I can download these tables pretty quickly. Most of them come out fairly nicely formatted. That didn't used to be there. Also, this search thing, it wouldn't be that useful on this report, and I won't go into the individual student data, but on the ones that have it, I can start typing in someone's ID number, and it dynamically will find that student. That is something that is a huge benefit that we've added, because before you had to download everything to Excel to look for something specific unless you wanted to scroll through 100 pages on your own. So I think I will wrap it up there. That's everything I know about user interface and the limitations of these specific things and how it relates to information retrieval. I hope I was a little bit informative about how two companies or two organizations share some information and what a couple of the steps, at least, it's fairly more complicated, that they have to go through to share that information and make it available to someone else to view. And I hope that this was a decent presentation. Thank you, Dr. Ma. Have a nice weekend.